Hello, everyone. Welcome to this first video interview with one of our rockstar customers, Tracy. Tracy is founder of Summit Search Consultants and lives in the beautiful Montana. Do you want to probably introduce Summit to our viewers?
Sure. We are a full service executive search firm. We will help organizations scale from field sales to the C-suite. We tend to specialize with startups, and we'll do everything from building out the sales force to the VPs of marketing, product directors and engineers that are building these products and innovating. And we specialize in med device. I would say that's probably 80% of what we do, but we also work in IT and some business to business industry.
Okay. All right. So going back about 8 years when you started Summit Search, what was your thought process and what got you into recruiting business in the first place? So before Summit Search, if I'm not wrong, you had no background in recruiting.
No, but I feel like I was somehow always involved because the recruiters that used to recruit me, my sales background is in the medical device industry. I don't know how I made, at least in their database, like, call this girl, she'll refer someone to you. So that's kind of how it got started. When I was in the field and I was still living in Texas at the time, I get these calls, hey, do you know anybody? They weren't even just recruiting me anymore. Now it was about who did I know? And, I worked in different states. My husband and I moved because of our careers in sales, in med device. My husband got into management. And I feel like I had this amazing network. So, that's what ended up happening. I would partner with recruiters. I never really got any type of reward or recognition for it, but I just became the go-to girl, which was fine. So I did tend to connect people. I think that was just kind of a natural thing for me. And I think they trusted me because I wouldn't just say, hey, I met this waitress last week and she wants to get into medical sales. I wouldn't mismatch like what I knew their client was looking for. So they knew that if I gave them a name, it was someone that was going to be someone I would want to work alongside. So I think they appreciated that there was some discretion there.
Sure.
So that's how it got started.
Right. So you
my recruiting got started before I actually recruited.
About 8 years back, you started Summit. Who was your first hire? How you scaled the team? How you scaled your BD and the customers that you've had over the years?
Sure. What I think is unique, and what, it's just my personal experience. I'm sure if you spoke to another firm that's in the same industry, they might have a completely different answer. But I think with my experience, it was a lot of building, going off the network and having the relationships and the trust with some really strong leaders in different organizations that I worked with. So being able to leverage those opportunities, those relationships. I remember when I was doing business development, it was like, well, who better to recruit talent for your organization than somebody who actually did this job and somebody who did it well. So I think it was helpful that I had a strong track record of performance, and then I could kind of parlay that into being able to identify your next rookie of the year, your next rep of the year, your next manager of the year. So that was, in the very beginning, it was definitely the plan to be a one-woman show and kind of run my own business by myself. And it just continued to grow, and the opportunities continued to expand, and then new companies began to want to work with me. Now we're a team of 7. I recruited my husband over and we work really well together. And, again, I think that relationship piece, the business development, having his experience in the field as well has been really an important factor in how we've grown.
In terms of your efforts and time, how much, just in terms of percentage, do you devote to BD versus recruiting? Let's say maybe early years of Summit, and what does that look like right now?
This is one of those things that we talk about every year. We're like, we have to focus more on this because, we have goals and we know where we want to take things. I think just each year we look back and we're really surprised by the growth that we've seen. We set goals and we're exceeding them every year. The pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench in my plans this year, but even still, I think it's still going to be a very good year. So it's still looking very positive. But we always joke, what if we did devote a significant amount of time to business development? Where would we be? But I think our growth has been very organic and very tied to, what we're able to successfully support. Um, I would say I personally don't dedicate too much time to it. For me, it's more networking with my contacts and, people make changes to new organizations and touching base with them. But Jason definitely does spend some time, but I want to say it's 10% maybe of his effort. It's not significant. So we're not a good example of, we're spending 30% of our time doing business development, but we are seeing the growth. I think in a 7-week time frame, we landed 5 new clients, 3 startups. And so, it's actually an unprecedented time to hire talent right now. So I give those companies credit for having the courage to push through, because you have a lot of great talent available right now that were impacted by the pandemic. So yeah, in 6 weeks, that was 5 new organizations. So I was surprised by that, but I'm not complaining. It was great.
What are the kind of traits do you look for when you are looking for a recruiter for Summit's team?
So we've hired people that had recruiting experience, and that is helpful for sure. But when I look back, I think it really comes down to someone's intangibles and just kind of their natural strengths, because you can teach them and it takes time. So in the very beginning, when I felt like I was definitely in need of support, but I just didn't necessarily have the time to train people, I felt like I had to go to recruiting experience. Now I feel like I'm more open-minded to take somebody that is eager to learn this industry. They have to have grit. They've got to be curious. They have to have resilience and a strong attention to detail. And so, to give you an example, the last 2 hires we've made, they had no prior recruiting experience, and they are phenomenal. They've blown my mind. And, they were new hires, and then the pandemic hit. So a lot of companies were looking around and say, okay, do we keep people on board? Do we lay people off? And I'm like, no, I got to get these people through this period. I've got to train them and see where they can go. And I'm really impressed with what they've done. But I think when I look across the entire team and I have to pick these intangibles and these personality traits and kind of how people are hardwired, they have to have resilience. They have to be curious, high attention to detail. They have to be driven. They have to be competitive, because even if you don't really have competition, if you're not performing for the client, you'll invite it. So you have to be on your game.
Your last 2 hires had no prior recruiting experience, and you have over last few months you've had to train them. So what does that training look like? Like, what are the aspects where you train them, and what are the challenges that you faced while training them?
I mean, I think sometimes just them trying to understand, I have to kind of, when we're training them, we have to give them probably more information than they might think they need. But I think us being able to really describe what each of these reps is doing on a day-to-day basis. What does a good day look like for those reps? What's a challenging day look like? And it seems like a lot of extra information, but I think it helps them understand when they're talking to candidates, how would this person fit into that scenario? So our training, we have a training manual. So it goes through each client, and, they also can look at LinkedIn and see what some of the past hires have looked like. So it kind of gives them an idea if there's a sequence or a pattern to certain things that are important to the client. We know a lot of this stuff, but I like having them research it as well. And we do a lot of, when they were in the office, because now we're all working virtually, they're listening to calls, and, they're just doing call training. And, what's great is every conversation, there's something to take away from that and learn and say, okay, did you hear that? And I ask them, hey, so what concerns you about some of the responses you got? And it's amazing to me what they can pick up on, and, learning from there, and just, they get better as they go. And we don't do tests or anything, but, occasionally we'll ask those questions, like, here's a situation. You've got this hiring manager, it's this type of position, this client that we work with, they need to fill a position in this location. Tell me what the ideal candidate looks like. And then we'll give them like 4 different resumes and say, you know, who's your winner? Who do you think is going to be leading with this? Who wouldn't you submit and why? So just giving them the ability to display some discretion and, you know, provide feedback from there.
Sure. Okay. So you mentioned call training, and in terms of your BD as well as recruiting tactics, what are the tools that you most rely on? For BD, do you mainly rely on maybe networking, cold calling?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't cold call for business development. I'm sorry.
Don't be embarrassed. I think you are one of
Okay.
the luckiest recruiters out there who doesn't, how to make.
If this is to help other agencies, I'm no help in this department.
No, it's cold calling. Although the efficacy of that method is decreasing every year, but it's still one of the most major tactics deployed in our industry, and it's a metric that is very closely tracked, especially when new hires come on board, right? So how many calls they are making, how many emails that they are writing, and I just wanted to get some idea in terms of.
I know I don't have an algorithm that I could say this is what we're doing and this is what works. And really, honestly, when it comes to these recruiters, and we're giving them the full desk recruiting from day one, so it's a lot for them to understand, you know, that whole process of recruiting the candidate and finding that right profile, but then also managing the interview process with the client. So then to put business development on them early on, I mean, I don't know, maybe they'll be getting ready for that soon. But that's probably something that we need to consider how we want to approach. I know the email campaigns, that's a great way to approach that. They're using email campaigns, testing them out for candidate recruitment.
Sure.
If somebody's not really giving us any type of attention per our LinkedIn, then that's when we'll try to reach out to them on email and see if maybe some of that sequencing inspires a response.
Sure.
So,
all right.
You could probably use it for business development down the road.
Yeah, no, it's, the sequencing in Recruiterflow is probably, used more for business development than recruiting.
Right.
Okay, a fun question. If you could travel back 8 years, what advice would you give to Tracy that time?
A good question. And I think that, again, looking back 8 years ago, and so much of my business development then was very much leveraging relationships. There was a couple of instances I can think of where I took on searches, and I probably needed to have a little more discernment about what I was willing to spend some time on. Because just because you have a relationship with someone doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the most effective business partnership. And I can certainly recall a couple of times where I spun my wheels, or maybe once everything came to a conclusion, it wasn't a great experience with the hiring manager, and maybe it wasn't a good candidate experience. So, looking back, I think the thing is, when you're new and you're building your business, you don't want to say no. You want to think that there's an opportunity every time something presents, so you say yes. And I learned that quickly, so I'm thankful for that. It's not like I'm here making the same mistakes 8 years later, but that was, looking back, there was definitely some times where I remember some tenured recruiters that I knew that were mentors to me. They would be like, well, be careful of this, be careful of that, but I might have let that relationship with that client override some discretion.
Right. So it's kind of important to focus, not just, when you are young, but pretty much all through, in terms of, what you can do well and stay focused on that. And, that's probably.
And I don't know, again, I'm just only speaking for our firm, but it is okay to say no. And people have to be comfortable doing that, because at the end of the day, there's only X amount of hours in the day. You're not going to forfeit sleep. So you have to be really protective about how you're spending that time. And, if you don't spend your time in the right places, you'll limit yourself on what you're capable of doing.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so right now, what are the major challenges and goals that you have for Summit? I know you're crushing your goals, but
Yeah, no, I really, I mean, I'm also optimistic, but I do believe our goals, I think we're going to get there. And if we don't get there and we set very aggressive goals, we'll get really close, closer than I would have expected if you would have asked me this question in March. I think in March, I was kind of like, what is going on? But I think the biggest challenge right now is keeping the momentum going. We can do that. And sometimes, some of our bigger clients, like those larger organizations, will say, okay, we're ready. And then we start getting going again. And then all of a sudden, well, no, we can't, we have to wait a little bit. We need a green light. So, whether they're looking to see how the quarterly performance is shaping up. And I understand, as a business owner myself and having the outlook on your revenue versus your expenses and everything else. So I don't blame them, but some of those challenges and gaining candidate engagement, but then all of a sudden just to let them know, oh, hold on, this is on hold again. So I think what we are starting to see is more consistency with going in the right trajectory of reopening, rehiring. And I think we're going to see some challenges with the pandemic, but I think people are more optimistic, and we're seeing the elective procedures come back, which is where a lot of our business focuses. We do work in infection control with a few different companies, so that's helpful because they've only gotten busier.
Yeah.
And that might have been a part of what's tempered some of this uncertainty, just because they're still pushing forward. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's some really good things happening. It's hard for me to really be too concerned with the challenges because right now I'm so excited that when we do have searches, we're able to engage really good candidates. Because that was not the case in January. You had in this country, a 3-point-something unemployment rate. So candidates had so many opportunities. They were so distracted. They were turning down offers. And I feel like now we're able to get these really great candidates very engaged. So that's exciting.
The uncertainty that was there earlier is declining, and there is, people have better visibility in terms of, what next 2 quarters, 4 quarters are going to look like, and they can plan ahead based on that. So, and it's going in the right trajectory, because we get to see data from so many users.
Yeah.
As our
you're seeing a global perspective,
yeah,
versus we're just seeing what's going on in our country.
Yeah. So it's definitely going on the right trajectory for North America. UK is also showing early signs. UK, Germany, both are showing early signs of recovery. We're still waiting to see that kind of recovery coming back to rest of the world. But it can't be that far behind. Last question, and this is how has Recruiterflow helped you over the last few months in operating and scaling Summit?
So Manon, I remember the email sequencing when you were trying to solicit me with your business development, and you kept talking about saving time. And I'm like, what kind of time can I really be saving? What is this person talking about? And I actually had to just take the step, try the software. And I remember I was a little concerned because I thought, gosh, I'm so busy right now. Am I going to have time to establish all these recipes and some of this automation? It went faster than I expected. Now that they're in place, tweaking them and modifying them for specific clients, specific roles, I believe we are saving so much time. And it's funny because when I have a new hire and I show them how to do some of these automated tasks that I used to manually do, and I was really fast at it. I could cut and paste like nobody else. But I mean, just that communication to the candidates and keeping them informed through steps of the process, and any type of preparation that they need to have. Recap the opportunity. All these were manually sent by me in the past. And so just the fact that that is all automated, and I tell the new hires, I'm like, you have no idea how good you have it. I used to have to do this with each person one by one. It took me forever. That would be like my nighttime work. And so now I can be done when my day ends. And I still occasionally will work at night because it's my nature, but I'm not doing that. Those are those tasks that the software can just do. So for me personally, I think it's a really big deal. And it was very noticeable how much time it saved me. You know, I'm sure you said you have 200 customers worldwide. Maybe they think other features are really great, but for me, this was a big one.
I'm glad, we could give you your evenings back.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
no, I think that's all we always aim to do, right? So we've always been very focused on productivity, and helping people do the things that they do faster, so that they can spend more time doing the things that they're supposed to do, right? So building
Sure.
relationships, maybe having a drink, um, you know. Uh,
Absolutely.
all right, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Tracy. This was an absolute delight. And good luck with Summit, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Manon. Take care.